exactly is Myanmar? It's in Southeast Asia and it's bounded by India, Thailand, Laos and China. From Vancouver, it's a long flight via Taipei in Taiwan. The Myanmar flag is red, green and gold with a 5-point star. Our tour started in Yangon, where we spent 5 days before flying up to Mandalay, where we had 3 days. Then we boarded a ferry and travelled down the Irawaddy River to Bagan, where we spent 3 days before flying to Hilo over here and getting a bus to Inle Lake, where we spent a further 3 days. Then it was back to Yangon and then continue on by road out to this point here where the famous Golden Rock is located. After a night out there, we returned to Yangon for one night and then went out to the Bay of Bengal for 3 lovely days by the beach, relaxing, and then back to Yangon for the end of the tour. I've never seen a train that I didn't want to ride on, so when Maura found this train that went all around the city of Yangon for 3 hours, all around the outskirts, for $1, and we had a day to spare, we decided to go on it. Having bought our tickets, the train came in and we boarded. Soon we were on our way. An interesting part of travelling by rail is the fact that you see the back views of houses, etc. when you're travelling through the city. We stopped at many stations and people got off and went off to their homes, and then we stopped at a market and these ladies all got on with the produce they had bought in the market. Now they seemed to be going to take it to other markets because while we were on the train with them, they sorted out their produce and did some bartering between each other and had a jolly good time chatting. It was quite fun to observe them all, and they didn't take much notice of us, so we enjoyed seeing it. The train continued around the suburbs and it was just a marvellous trip. It's quite a famous trip if one is visiting in Yangon. Quite a few people, tourists, go on it because it's a way of seeing life around the city. The Shwedagon Pagoda is the cultural and spiritual heart of Burma. 60 tons of gold adorn the pagoda, which rises 320 feet from its base and covers a vast area. People of Myanmar are Buddhists, very devout Buddhists, and to gain merit they pray a lot, they bring gifts, they bring flowers, and generally lead a very devout life because their belief is that they will be reincarnated in the next life. So the more merit they can gain through their life, the better chance they have of getting a better position after reincarnation. The temple complex is a magnificent place with gold leaf on so many of the buildings. When the British and other Europeans came to Southeast Asia, they brought their Christian religion, and this is the cathedral in Yangon. After 5 days, we boarded a plane and flew up to Mandalay. Mandalay is the industrial centre of the country, much more industrial than Yangon, and this is also where the British had their base during the time that they ruled Burma. They had their capital here, and now it's a bustling city with lots of small industry and lots of activity. When the British were in charge, they built a lot of European-style buildings, but they also built the city hall in more of an Oriental style. So it's a kind of interesting architecture. On the streets of Mandalay, it's quite common to find ladies with birds in baskets like this, and they will sell them, these captured birds, to tourists or other people who can then release them. On one of our days in Mandalay, we went on a boat upriver for about an hour, and as we went we could see the activity on the waterway. It's a very busy waterway. But it's also very shallow. So you see these boats have got these long feller shafts that they swing up and down out of the water because of the shallow depth. Teak wood is very valuable in this area, and this is a boom of teak being towed downriver. An hour upstream, the ferry docked, and Moira made an elegant job of getting off the boat. This is the site of this huge unfinished pagoda. The king wanted to make it the largest pagoda in the world. He planned to make it 500 feet tall, but he got only as far as 236 feet on the base before there was a gigantic earthquake and the whole base was shattered. This megalomaniac king also made this bell, the largest bell in the world. It's 12 feet high and 16 feet diameter. Moira was able to get a good tone out of it as she rang it. Inside is just a large dome, and it's reputed that the king had the engineer who built it assassinated because he didn't want him to build another one. Myanmar is quite rich in gold, which it mines itself, but it doesn't export because it uses most of it for adorning the temples and Buddhist statues. When they mine the gold and they make it into ingots, and then they put it in these wooden blocks, and these young men hammer it. Now sometimes they hammer it for 5 hours. It's an amazing job, but gradually gold can be thinned down to a very thin leaf, and having worked for that long, the leaf is taken out, and these ladies cut it into sizes and put it between wax paper, and then it's sold to the devout who can take it and put it on the Buddhas or the temples. Then it was another elegant little stroll back onto the ferry and on our way. Visiting the temples, this is where one can see they take the gold leaf and put it on the Buddhas, building it up to amazing depth. The temples are very ornate, and in some of them they have various art items that they have got through wars from the surrounding countries, because in the old days these countries were all at war: Laos, Cambodia and Burma. It seemed that there was always something to see, and this was a dancing elephant. Of course it's not a real elephant, but dancing in the street, and much to the entertainment of everybody passing by, except for the vehicles. They just drove on by without much consideration. There's quite a lot of marble available in the area of Mandalay, and they use this marble to make the Buddhist statues. Now the less skilled tradesmen make the body, and then the more skilled tradesmen make the head. They're all very well made, very fine, and there's a great trade for them because they are so much needed in all these locations. And there's also lots of needlework. Close by is this bridge. It's the longest teak bridge in the world, and it's very popular at dawn and dusk for people to go out and watch the sunrise and sunset. There are little kids playing in the sand. And out in the water, boatsmen ply to get tourists to go out in the boats to observe the sunset or sunrise from the water. It's quite pleasant because it's very popular, lots of people about, and this is the great thing to do in this area. Driving out of Mandalay, we passed this beautiful flower market. The people love to buy flowers because they adorn the Buddha statues in the temples and also in their homes with flowers, and they grow these beautiful flowers in the higher areas outside Mandalay. Now, when the British were in Burma, they had a hill station. The British always liked the hill stations because when it got very hot down in the plains, they could go up and stay in these more temperate climates. And outside Mandalay, 3,000 feet above sea level, there's one such hill station that the British built, and we had decided we were going to go up and view it. This road was quite steep because it was going up from the river up to 3,000 feet. It's an interesting thing in Myanmar that the vehicles are all right-hand drive, but they drive on the right-hand side of the road. So this is an interesting situation. When we got up to the hills, the little town in the hill station, we found that they built this tower, and they had the clock, which was the chimes of Big Ben, because the British liked these sort of things. They also had these rather attractive horse and buggy that they used quite commonly, and of course when they left, these were still left over, and now they're used even today, but they're getting a little bit dilapidated. But now they're used for camera-tooting tourists. But out in the countryside around the little town, they made some really nice buildings, and one of them was this beautiful hotel, which is now being renovated. You can imagine the British there during the time of the Raj, when the officers only could go to these higher places and enjoy themselves with their gin and tonics. Moving on, it was very common to come on processions and little celebrations, and we came on this one where these young fellows are being paraded round, and they're going to become monks. It's like an initiation. When they get to a certain age, they're become monks, and they can go into become monks for different periods of time. Some of them quite short, but some of them make a life of it. But they decorate the animals and take the little boys along and parade them all around the villages. While we were up in that area, we went to visit this rather interesting temple, which was entirely constructed of teak. Now, teak is a very hard wood and probably very good for carving, but how intricate all this work is. And history has it that this temple was actually built here and then taken down by a king and built somewhere else, and then his son, when he took over, he took it down again and brought it back to this site. So it's got quite a history. But as you see, the carving is very beautiful. And there's even teak Buddha in the temple. You see these long, straight teak logs that support this ceiling. Another king decided he would make the longest book in the world, 729 marble slabs, with each slab in its own pagoda. Each slab is a page, so it took 200 craftsmen 7.5 years to complete. Traveling around the different areas, you come to different types of pagoda. This one is quite a different design, and this is famous for its elevation, where you can go up in the evening and watch the beautiful sunset with all the monks. It's a very pleasant place to watch the sundown. After 3 days in Mandalay, we got a boat and continued down the Irawaddy River to Bagan. We set off very early, and as the sun rose, we could see all the activities on the banks of the river, and also the number of pagodas everywhere along the hills by the river. The river is very busy, and when Rudyard Kipling referred to the road to Mandalay, he was actually referring to the Irawaddy River as the road. There's all sorts of traffic, but it is also very shallow, and the watercraft have to make their way through the shallows. There's a barge of teak logs going one way, and as we continued on our way, and we came to this very long bridge. You can see how far the bridge goes beyond the banks of the river. That's because this is in a plain and it's very flat, so that when the river floods, the water goes far out. During the afternoon, our boat ran aground, and it took some time to get off the sandbank. You can see the fellow up the front. He's got a pole, and he's actually sounding the water depth to see if they can find a channel through. Eventually, we did get through and proceeded on our way up to Bagan. When we got to Bagan, they put up the gangplank, but it had been in the waters, so they washed off the ends before they allowed people to disembark. And as soon as they cleared the end, with somebody holding a bamboo pole each end, people made their way down the gangplank onto the shore. This was the boat we'd come downriver on, and we had a very pleasant 8-hour trip. When we got off, we climbed up the bank and made our way. There was a bus waiting for us, and they took us to a very nice hotel. Bagan is quite a nice town. It's now a touristy town because of the temples in the surrounding area. I just bought this cap. It's quite nice, and I'm very pleased with it. I don't usually wear a cap, but I needed one to keep the sun off my face. It was quite expensive. I paid $360 for it, and I bought more than one as well. Total of $720. It's quite expensive, but we like them, and they're good quality. Oh, and by the way, as a come-on, they threw in a free balloon ride with the purchase. We weren't going to go on a balloon ride, but we probably will now that it's free. So here we are off on our free balloon ride. They're just getting ready to get the balloons into the air. First operation is to blow up the balloon canopy with high pressure air fans, and as soon as it's off the ground they can start lighting the gas flame, and this heats up the air in the balloon, and before long the whole balloon rises. We get in the basket and we're airborne. Balloon operators are under kind of air traffic control, so there's a lot of chatter as we were drifting away from the takeoff area. Bagan was the capital of the kingdom of Pagan, and kingdom's height between the 11th and 13th centuries, over 10,000 Buddhist temples, pagodas and monasteries were constructed on the plains, of which over 2,200 temples and pagodas still survive to the present day. It's quite a thrill to drift along as the sun came up, drift along over these temples, stretching as far away as the eye could see. It was quite dramatic. Bagan stands out not only for the sheer number of religious edifices, but also for the magnificent architecture of the buildings. The temples fall into two broad categories: the stupa style solid temple and the gu style hollow temple. A stupa, also called a pagoda, is a massive structure, typically with a relic chamber inside. In contrast, the stupa, the hollow gu style temple, is a structure used for meditation, devotional worship of the Buddha and other Buddha rituals.
Exactly, it'll be busy.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of views here of the temples as we drifted along in our balloon. I think I'll leave them on here because one doesn't often get a chance to see so many amazing religious art buildings all at one time. So it's quite spectacular. So we'll just leave this view and run it for a little while longer. Now we're approaching the land, and we have to just get over the top of this tree because we're going to land further on beyond the other balloon. And so there's a couple of blasts of the gas flame before we get over the tree, and we'll go on down, and shortly we come in to land beside the other balloon. Back on the ground after a champagne drink at the end of our flight, we tour some other magnificent pagodas. This one here has got 4 Buddhas facing out, one in each of the cardinal directions and each in a different pose. This is these are all very significant to the religion. This is a very significant pagoda because this is one of the only ones in the area that one is allowed to climb, and it's a favorite place for people to climb to watch the sunset. We climbed up there and got up quite high, and were able to look around at all the area as the sun slowly sank towards the horizon. A magical experience to see the sun setting with all the temples on the plain in front. However, when the sun had set, it came time to go down. We had to go down these very steep steps, and there was quite a crowd. So it was quite interesting to watch people. Moving on along, we found this fellow with his bullock doing some work. He was squeezing peanuts to produce peanut oil. As that middle piece went around, it squashed the peanuts and the oil came out below. Close by there was a fellow who was working on getting palm oil out of palm trees. He would climb up and cut the loom and hang a pot underneath to collect the palm oil as it leaked out. This is the palm oil in the container, and these are samples of the flowers that he. The next place of interest we visited was Mount Popa, a sheer solid volcanic plug which rises 737 meters above sea level with a Buddhist monastery on top. There are 777 steps to climb to reach the summit. Having reached the top, we were persuaded to have our photograph taken. Notice no shoes or socks. These are some other members of our party. The 3 days in Bagan, we flew across to Hilo and from there got a bus and then boarded a boat to go out to Inle Lake. Infrastructure in Myanmar is still quite limited, so notice a 20-minute delay because of parking at our destination airport. Our aircraft captain waiting for clearance to take off. When we took off, we flew out over the Irawaddy River and before long turned east up into the mountains. It was a very pleasant flight because we were now going quite into a higher altitude area. When we arrived at Hilo, we got a bus and taken down to this canal, and we boarded these long boats for our trip across Hilo Inle Lake. Before long we were scooting down the river, the canal, towards the lake, under these rather interesting bridges and by these buildings all built on stilts. People who live in this area are water people and they live by the water, and most of their houses are raised above the level on stilts. Here are some people building a bridge, and a little bit further on some people in their rather frail boat. And we continued on our way with a wave from Moira in her expensive cap. We were told that these seagulls come down from Russia during the northern winter. Then we were out in the lake, and the interesting thing about this lake is these fishermen who are called leg rowers. You'll notice how they use their leg to row their boat, to control the oar. It's quite a delicate thing they do because they use the legs so that they will have hands free for to deal with their nets. Here's a fellow and he's got his leg wound around his oar and he's got a hand free. They drop these nets on the bottom of the lake to catch the fish. Continued across the lake and came to this rather interesting entrance, sailed through. We're very pleased to see that this was a resort where we were going to spend the next 3 nights. We were actually going to be in the cabin, which is just to the left of the dock. We moved up to the dock, and it's a delicate operation to get in and out of these boats. One has to be very careful. We were greeted by a group Bagan, we made our way to our cabin, and it was very attractive. I tried to assure the other couples that women are much more amorous under a mosquito net, but none of them seemed to believe. The resort was very nice, with all wood construction and nice flower gardens, very well kept, and a nice dining area. So we had our lunch, settled down, and had a nice. Next morning, Moira was able to watch the sunrise from her balcony. The area around the lake is very interesting, with a lot of minority tribes, and we were able to go and see some of the villages where the people go about their daily life. This lady is dealing with sunflower seeds, and then we walked on a bit further, and these people were having their lunch.
Put it in the cotton bag. Hide it. And I put another stone on it.
And this lady is doing her cooking. This is very reminiscent of when we were in Atwara in Africa. A lady used to be outside my door in Shinyanga, and she used to cook like this. Teak is quite common in this area, and this is a sawmill in the village, and of course every village must have its pagoda because people need to have an opportunity to gain merit. The important thing in life is to gain merit always. During our 3 days by the lake, we went out each day in these long boats, and one day we went to the floating islands. Now, people live on these floating islands, which are weed, which is all met together and held in place with bamboo posts. You see, the bamboo posts keep the weed from floating away, so they do their farming, their gardening and everything on the floating island. Here again we're passing some more leg rower fishermen. You see again the way they're using their leg to control the oar. It's a very delicate balancing act. After a while we went into some more canals between the floating islands, and it was scooting along, Moira with her expensive hat on. Really nice, I'm glad we bought it. And our driver behind, controlling the boat. And along the way there are gardens. These are the gardens on the floating islands. Later on we went up a river where they had to build dams across to give enough depth for the boats to fly up through the rivers. People live all along the rivers and canals. And eventually we came to a town with this big market. This is a local market where they have all sorts of produce. They can grow amazing produce on the islands, and this is where they market it amongst themselves. In the school, the kids were reciting their lessons. They do it seems to be by rote, and it was quite nice to hear them chanting. In a temple close by there are these 4 Buddhas, which are completely covered with gold. You can hardly see the shape of the Buddha because there's so much gold. Originally, the Buddhas looked like that before they were covered. Each year they take the Buddhas out in this barge and take them all around the lake, and they visit all the villages. So this is a big ceremony, and they have this golden barge, and they attend all the local villages. While we were in the town, we visited this interesting forge. You see, there was one fellow beating first, then a second one came in, and then they get their rhythm right, and a third one comes in. And you can imagine if they mistimed and smashed one, one hammer into the other, how drastic that would be. We were out walking in the countryside and we came to this village where these girls were preparing to watch a procession of young boys passing by who had been made into monks. They were all dressed in their finery, and then the parade of children came along. These are just young children that are going to be monks. And with great fanfare they were taken out and paraded all around the local villages. In the same area we came across this huge area of stupas. There were over 4,000 of them, and most of them had fallen into disrepair. And there was a forest of stupas. Now it's a World Heritage Site, and what they've started to do is to renovate the stupas, and whether this is a good idea or not, because some of them now that have been repaired look a bit overdone. These are the repaired stupas, and when they are doing the repairs, they start from the top and work down, and this is one under repair. After 3 days in Inle Lake, we flew back to Yangon and continued on by road out to see the Golden Buddha. We spent a night out there before returning to Yangon for one night, and then continuing out west to the Bay of Bengal for 3 nights. Driving in the countryside was kind of interesting. As I said, the driver's on the right, and they drive on the right. Now he's trying to overtake, our driver's trying to overtake this truck, trying to overtake him on the left, but the truck won't move over. So our driver undertakes to go around the other side and accelerates and pushes his way through. So this was quite a maneuver, but he got through. Our next destination was the Golden Rock. Now all pilgrims and we have to go up on these trucks. They're called chicken trucks, and there's hundreds of pilgrims go up every day. There's some of our tourists in the middle of the truck, and we were all ready to go. And we had to wait because the convoys go in single file because the road is not very wide. So eventually we set off and in the convoy and followed the preceding truck. Then, having stopped briefly to get some merit, we carried on. Now we were going very fast, and the trucks were swinging all over the road, making lots of noise. We hurried along, climbing up the hill, and the truck in front was there for quite a while, but then it got away from us, and as it disappeared into the distance, I got quite concerned that our driver would go crazy just trying to catch it up, because the previous truck had completely... After getting off the truck, we had to climb on foot for a further hour before seeing the rock. Now this rock is the third most important Buddhist pilgrim site. The small pagoda, 24-foot, built on the top of the rock, and according to legend, the rock is precariously perched on a strand of Buddha's hair, which keeps it in place. It's covered with gold, only men can touch it, and the pilgrims come from all over and they stay up there overnight. So they are so devout. We got a very nice hotel, and then next morning we had to hike some way down the hill to get another truck going down. Here's one coming down, but it's full, so we couldn't get it, and so we had to wait for another one. These are all the pilgrims who'd spent overnight up there. Eventually we got our truck, but we had to wait quite a while before our convoy could go back down the road. On the way back to Yangon, we visited the Commonwealth Cemetery for the Second World War. And the Japanese had occupied Burma and had been eventually driven out by the British and Commonwealth forces, but it was a very bloody campaign. On the way out to the Bay of Bengal, we visited this rather interesting place where they were making these ceremonial umbrellas. This is a huge job, and they had actually got an order for 12 of them from Switzerland. These are only used for ceremony, they're not used for keeping the rain off. When we got to the Bay of Bengal, we had this very nice hotel for 3 nights. It was so nice to relax on the beach, beautiful sights, and we were able to walk a long ways on the beach, and then we had our breakfast out on the balcony. It was all very pleasant.